Alrighty, guys, this is snugsonblitz, and I'm back on another video for you today. I've done tier 10, I've done tier 8, so naturally, we've got to talk about tier 9 today. I'm going to share my thoughts on what I think these tanks can do for the average player, not the pros, not the fools. If you're an average player, maybe 46 to 50%, somewhere in that realm, and you pick up one of these tanks, generally speaking, how easy will it be for you to perform with these tanks? Now, a few things before we start. Number one, the volume using this mic is a little bit low, so just boost your volume. There's the ability to do that. Number two, because it's a headset mic, you'll get a little bouncy every now and then. I can't do anything about it. If you want to help me out, you can always send me a donation and I will pick up a better mic to be able to do these recordings for you. But I'm using my computer. This is the mic I got. So what can I say? You're stuck with this for now. Anyway, let's just get right into it. I'm not going to waste any more time. You know my theories on how I grade these tanks. I've explained it in the previous videos. If you want to go check my tier 10 reasoning or tier 8 reasoning, you can check that out, but it's pretty much the same. I'm just thinking, if you pick up this tank, how competitive will you be on the battlefield? Not just win rate, damage, spotting, doing all that thing to help your team. I don't care about win rate that much. I see a lot of people here in Asia. That's also an important thing to state. We're not talking about Europe. We're not talking about America. I can only talk about what I see. I'm in Asia. Therefore, I'm going to talk about the Asian server. Might be different where you are. So yeah, and you can bitch and moan in the comments below if you don't like any of that stuff. But for the people who are going to stay, let's just get to it. The 50 TP Proto. I mean, it's a solid tank. Yeah, I'm going to put in good. Don't think it's strong, but it's definitely better than okay and nowhere near yuck. The 50 TP is right next to it. Almost identical tanks. Yeah, slight variations. Turret's a little bit different, flatter versus rounder. Both are about as competitive as each other. I like them both. Yeah, I think I have almost identical win rates in both tanks. Maybe the 50T Proto is slightly higher, but yeah, good tanks. Now, this one's a tough one, the AE Phase 1. I don't have this tank. I almost never see this tank on the battlefield. Those people who have it, they're just extremely lucky. I can't judge it on anything because I don't see pros driving it around. I just see it every now and then, and I don't even check who's got it. So this is going off pure guessing here, but I think this will perform in good. Seems about as good as these two tanks. It's a heavy tank. It's better than M103, the American tank, which would be maybe comparable to this. And it even looks like these two tanks. So let's just stick it right next to it and move on. The AMX-30 1ER Proto, it's a fast tank. I like it. It's a fun tank if you know what you're doing. Most people don't, so I'm going to put it in okay for now. I might move it down to bad. I'm just trying to run the tapes in my mind whether this tank is really good for the average player or not. Let me think about that. We'll leave it there for a second. The AMX-50 120, well, it has those 3 shells. Doesn't quite have the armor of these tanks, but I think its ability to perform on the battlefield will be about the same because this is more damage potential. This is more frontline potential. So just sit a little bit further back in this tank, come in when you're needed, and you'll do just fine. Bat Chats, it's definitely not as strong as the tier 10. And because it's got a light tank with almost no armor, I think I'm going to have to put it in okay for now. Now, this is a new tank that just got released. I'm surprised it's not even on this list, to be honest with you. I don't know how this performs. I wouldn't even, but I would estimate that it's about the same level as these tanks. I mean, it's a heavy tank. It's been compared to these two tanks by Droodles, the 50 TP Proto and the 50 TP, whatever that is. The CC Mark II, which is basically a Minotauro in tier 9, I can't put it higher than good. Its lack of mobility, poor armor on the sides will get a lot of people in trouble. I can't put in strong, I don't think, but I can put in good. It does perform better than these two tanks, I think. The Sent 7 was once a beast, especially in the right person's hands. It suffered. It's got, I don't know what they did to it, but been nerfed somehow. I don't think it's really justified because the tank was only ever good in a pro's hands. Everybody else seemed to struggle with it, so I don't know why they did that. I can only put in okay for now. I might even put it in bad. Yeah, I think right now I'm going to put in bad. I don't see this play very well, and maybe that's because of all the nerfs it's received. Yeah, we'll put in bad for now. The Char 4. Most of the people who have this tank are pretty good players, so it's a little hard to judge. But I think it actually does a little bit better than those two tanks, and I'm putting good surprisingly. I think for a good player, it would be put into strong. I would say if you're a pro, maybe move these tanks one level up. That's the best way I can assess these tanks, generally speaking. Yeah, I think so. I'll consider the Char 4. That's a tough one. The Cobra. I can't put in OP. I can't put in strong. It seems to perform just decently well. It's very much like a Conway-ish tank with that big derpy type gun, longish reload, but not that many players who were average or below average have gotten their hands on this tank, so it's hard to really judge it. Most of the time I see them being played by pros, but when I have run into the player who doesn't do very well in it, I'm like, oh, okay, that explains it. The Conqueror used to be somewhere down here, but it has gotten buffs. I would put it almost into OP for most pros nowadays, I think. But I think sadly, for the average player, it can only go down into good. It performs a little bit better than these tanks, and this tank, of course. The Conway, as I said, it's like a Cobra. If you play it like a tank destroyer, you'll be fine. I think it has the speed boost, if I'm not mistaken, so that's really helpful. It's a bit big, but again, it's a tank destroyer, and average players, or not so average players, worse players may play it as a tank destroyer. And lo and behold, they're able to do some serious damage or help out on the battlefield. So will that mean they win the game? Probably not, if they don't know what they're doing. But still, they can help out, and they're not dying in 3 seconds. The CS-59, I can only put it around here. It's not played by many players these days, rarely see on the battlefield, and I think that's because word's gotten out that it's just not a very good tank. I think it's actually decent. I would put in okay for sure. I actually rather like this tank, but I'm thinking of the average player, so there you go. E50. It's definitely not the E50M for sure. I think I'm going to put an okay, and the only reason I think the armor does give it a little bit of advantage over these two tanks. The Bat Chat gets the benefit of the 3 shells, and the AMX for its mobility. And the armor is kind of troll, I must say. The E75, well, this is one I'm tempted to put into strong, but, well, where should we put it here? Okay, we'll put it in strong for now. I think it's a little bit more effective compared to some of these tanks because of its armor profile. The Emil 2. Some people will get in a little bit of trouble because of those 3 shells, so I'm going to put it into good. Yeah, it's a pretty decent tank. If you know what you're doing, definitely goes into strong, I think, but I'm going to keep it in good for now. What else have we got here? We have the Foch. Before I would have put it, this is, if I'm not mistaken, has been buffed recently, or was it only the tier 10? I forget. I think I'm going to go, it's got no turret, so I'm going to have to go with okay. Lack of turret makes your tank suffer because you're not as versatile. If you don't know what you're doing, then it's going to be a problem. But if you can use it as a sniper to begin, you should be okay. The armor does work against tier 8s especially. The Glacier goes straight down here. Do not see this tank played well, even by pros. It's often not top of the damage board. It's I think it's a worse Centurion, but I'll put in the same category right now. The Hori, yeah, that's a good tank destroyer. Armor works. I think it actually plays a little bit better than the Foch for the average player. The armor seems to be a bit more reliable, so that will help them out. So I'm going to put into good for now. I will think about that as we go on later. IS-8. I think its speed hurts it, and people tend not to know how to use this tank compared to these heavier tanks, which get a little bit more bounces out in the open. This tank is a little bit of a weird one. It's more like a heavium, and heaviums tend not to do really well in the hands of the average player. Jaegeru, I think this is the best tank destroyer in tier 9, probably. I'm going to put into good. Just the gun shreds, absolutely shreds. So, yeah, got to be here, I think. Yeah, I can see people doing 2,000, 3,000 damage. The K91, I think I'm going to put into good. I think this is a very strong tank. One of my favorites in tier 9, that's for sure. But people can get in all sorts of trouble with 3 shells. They fire them, they get caught out all alone or pushing too hard. So I'm going to put into good. No. I'm thinking about it. Actually, I think I'm going to put into strong, actually. Yeah. Recently, I've seen people who are not that good do quite well in these tanks. 2.5K, 3K, solid damage. For the average player, sometimes that's pretty impressive. Skoda has 3 shells. That's the good news. It's not quite the tier 10 tank, which is strong for sure. I think I'm going to drop this down to. Actually, I think I'm going to drop it down to okay. Again, like put the AMX here. So to me, I guess I've got to put it in the same realm. Should I drop the AMX down? Yep, I'm going to drop the AMX down. Sorry, AMX has got to go right next to the Skoda. I mean, essentially similar tanks in the sense they're mobile, clippers. These 3 are all clippers. They don't have the armor to really stand up to a lot of guns. So yeah, you're going to get wrecked a lot of times. KPZ 70. I mean, this has got a buff, but unfortunately, most people can't take advantage of that buff. So it's good. Yeah, I think this is very strong. Not quite OP. I'd put it here for sure myself, but average player, just here. Leopard PTA. Wow. Okay, I'm going to put it here for now, and I might drop it down. This is one of those bad tanks. Yep. And I'll reassess this as I go later on, but I'm just going to put it there just because it's got no armor. Not the best gun depression. It's a little too fast for its own good, I think, for players who don't know what they're doing. Overextend, get ripped apart. M103 used to be here. I think it's one of the weaker tanks, unfortunately. Right now, it needs something. It needs a little bit of love from Wargaming. That would be a shame. Yeah, I mean, this is an old boy in the game. It's been around forever since when the E50 came out and stuff. So give it a little bit of love. I think it has the new. Did it get some? I'm thinking here. It didn't get the speed boost, right? I think a speed boost would really help this tank. Maybe give it something different compared to many of the other heavy tanks. So yeah, need something. M40 patent, 48, 46 patent, sorry, going right down here for now. We will assess this in a second. I'm not going to spend much time talking about it. It's not much armor. Malshin, I mean, the gun does hit pretty hard, and so it's easy for people to do something on the battlefield, which is good. But yeah, it can't be higher than good, I think. 704, I think it's around Foch level. Being low to the ground makes it a little bit hard to manufacture shots sometimes. Getting the right positions to take advantage of that gun. Some maps are not that good for it. Just like the Foch, a little bit low. I think the Ag Tiger allows, sitting up higher, in the Conway, you can peek over rocks and get better positions, more options. So that's why I think I'm going to separate these 2 types of tank destroyers. What else we got here? Ooh, the 452. 452. To me, very similar to an IS-8 in its capability on the battlefield. It's a little bit of a weird tank. The armor can work really well and then not work really well at all. So I think for newer players or players who are not that experienced, they might struggle to get into. That's why I see them die quite easily. 752. Well, where should we put this? Should we put this down here? Okay, bad. No, it's okay. It's OP. Oh my God, this tank is great. Yep, the first tank that has cleared the OP barrier. And if you don't have this tank and you get this tank, get it. Get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. Hopefully for gold instead of cash. But yeah, that's one tank you want to get if you want to increase your win rate, especially in tier 9. The Object 84, I see a lot of people struggle with this tank. It's not fast enough, unfortunately, compared to maybe some other tanks, especially the tier 10 LT 100 Light, which is a very nice tank in my opinion. But this one, it suffers, I think because of the lack of speed. Regressor, well, where's that going to go? I mean, it's a copy paste. I mean, that means if you include the phase 1 as pretty much a copy of these or similar, that means you got like 5 tanks here. Goodness me. I don't really know what the difference is between these. I never see it on the battlefield. Yeah. ST1, it's a little bit sluggish. That armor will keep it alive, and that's why I'm just going to put into good. But it's scraping into good because of lack of mobility. However, it does have that speed boost. That does help it. Standard B actually goes into good. Yeah, this is one of the mediums that I would recommend you pick up in tier 9. It is a very nice tank. The 12254, fast, great DPM, but unfortunately being low to the ground makes it good for sniping from distance because the camo values are very good. But problem is armor is not that great, and if people are too aggressive with it, they get wrecked. Armor is not going to really save them much. T54, I want to put into good, but unfortunately I'm going to have to put it just next to okay. Yeah, in many ways it's similar to the AMX 31. Yeah, the armor will work from time to time depending on the opponents you come up against. The gun works. You might need to use Primo a little bit more than you might want to. T55, where would I put that? Well, it's pretty much a copy paste, so I'm just going to shove it right here. Somehow I want to actually almost put it down here because I just don't see newer players or average players playing this very well. But I'm going to stick it here because it's essentially the same tank, essentially. T30, where would I put that? Well, I think I'm going to have to put it in strong. The gun works. What can I say? You can easily do damage in this tank. If you use Primal, you'll be able to pen pretty much everything. You can compete against tier 10, no problem. It's a great tank, even the average player. Unfortunately, T54E1 will have to go in here. It's got the 3 clips. That's why it gets into this category, just like the Batchat. Big surprise there. I think having HE would be nice in this thing. I don't know why they just don't give it HE. It won't help it that much, but every now and then you'll be able to swing around some big tanks and unleash that HE. Would be a lot of fun, I think, for this tank. It's a shame. T92E1 goes not 29, it's T92, right? T92, somebody got numbers mixed up, but I'm going to put into good. Just don't overextend yourself, and you'll be fine. This tank, it can be a sniper, a little bit of TD type tank. The T95 goes into good. Problem is, it's if you go the wrong direction or put yourself in a bad position, you can get in all sorts of trouble. But yeah, the armor works, the gun works, yeah, and that speed boost does help. DL, I think for the average player, I think I'll have to put it in bad. Sorry to say, just doesn't really have something that really helps it apart. But I think pros do pretty well in this tank, or good, I should say. But it's not an easy tank, I think, for most players. The BZ is a heavy tank, but I don't think it has the advantages of these tanks up here. I think it's more like a IS-8 to me, more like a heavium. So it goes right there. The Tortoise, lack of a turret hurts it. Penable here, it's a little bit big. You can do some crazy damage in this tank. The gun definitely works, but for the average player, it's okay. Type 61 goes here. Why? Because of the lack of armor. Gun is great though, but my advice is use it as sniper to begin. Type 68, the armor does work a little bit better than the VZ, so I guess I'm gonna have to put into good. Yeah, this one's I'm torn. It could drop down into okay. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I'm thinking about the last few hundred games I've had in tier 9. Yeah, I can't explain it, but I think Type 68 goes into okay. No. I'm thinking. I'm. Yep. Okay. Yeah, it's still good. Vickers. Well, I think I'm gonna have to put it in. Yeah, it's close to a T54, T55 for most players. Gotta know how to use that mobility. VK, you have to know how to side scrape, which makes it a little bit awkward. I want to put it up here I think for most players, I'm going to have to put it around here. I don't see them perform very well on the battlefield. Side scraping, this is what it's meant for. Not that much opportunity to use side scraping generally in Blitz. I would say 1 or 2 times out of 10 games, especially here on the Asian server. But it might vary from where you are. WT, I mean, it can perform. It may have no armor, but this can snipe like no other tank really in the tier. Fabulous sniping ability, and the gun hits so hard. Ritter, I'm just gonna put it into good. I love these tanks. I think they're fantastic, but it doesn't mean I think I would recommend them for most players. Why? No armor. But yeah, can they help out? Absolutely. WC114, I think it goes into here. It's very similar to the VZ51. IS8, yeah, to me it's heavy-ish. WZ1GFT, lack of turret hurts this. It's a little bit better. I think it's close to Hori, so I think I put into good for most players. VZ114, oof, this is a tough one. I think I can only put it in okay. And the problem is the armor does work and the gun does work, but the long reload hurts it, and you can end up saving your hit points, but your team falls apart, and then you're screwed because you're fighting 2 or 3 tanks, which is tough. WZ120, I can only put it here. It's close to T54, T55. Gun depression does hurt it, but the armor does work. And lastly, the WZ130, which is a light tank. So it automatically goes into bad for most players. It doesn't have the Vickers smooth moving ability or gun depression, which makes it a less versatile tank. So now the question is, which tanks of these go into the bad category? Well, I think for the average player, well, TL7 does have some armor. CS15 has some armor. Even the Scent has some armor. But guess what doesn't have any armor? It is the Leopard PTA. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was the lowest performing tank in Tier 9. I wouldn't be surprised. But I wouldn't be surprised if the WZ132A is also the lowest performing tank. And I'm thinking about these 2 tanks. I think the Patton would also have to go into this category as well. I like the tank. It's a tough tank though, and I think the problem with it is it doesn't have the best gun depression. The turret doesn't really work. You're an American tank. You want to peek on over and be able to take some hits. But I mean, I think the Persian's turret is more effective. It feels it anyway to me, and I don't see people playing it very well. I could even put the Type 61 down in Yuck, I think, for most players, average players. But the gun does work. If you play it like a sniper, I think you'll be fine to begin with. Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair list. Now, does that mean these tanks are the worst tanks ever? No. It means that they're much harder to play, especially if you don't really know what you're doing. Anybody can perform well in these tanks, and anybody can perform poorly in these tanks. Doesn't mean that these tanks are absolute garbage and you should never play them. But I admit that if you want to play these tanks, I think you should put on your big boy pants and put in a little bit more effort. Be more cautious. All this whole zone. And over here, you can be a little bit wilder and crazier. You can gamble a little bit more. You can take more risks. You'll find it an easier playstyle if you're not a pro. If you're a pro, you choose which tanks are OP for you. Maybe one day I will rank these tanks based on what I think, how I play them, and how I feel they are. But I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. How will you do it? How will you do with it or these tanks? I can't say what you're good at. You may be a 55% player, but only in heavy tanks. In medium tanks, you drop down to 46%. In tank destroyers, maybe 50%. Who knows? You may be 58, 58, and 52. Maybe tank destroyers 52. I forgot about light tanks. Maybe you're 38% in light tanks, but 42 in mediums, and 46 in heavy tanks. So I can't judge you. Only you can do that. I'm trying to give you my thoughts on why these tanks do well or don't do well on the battlefield. Again, I'm talking about Asia, and I don't know. You'll probably disagree with me vehemently. You'll bitch and moan and complain at how stupid Snugs is. Snug doesn't know anything. That's fair. You're welcome to your opinion. It's a free world. But some people want to know what I think, and I think it may be helpful for some people. That's why I do this channel, not to make myself rich. Definitely not to make myself rich because I make almost no money from this. I do it out of the kindness of my heart, and yet people still attack me. Go right ahead. I do it as a labor of love for you guys, and those people who do appreciate it. I'm glad you appreciate it. It makes me happy. That's why I do this. That's why I run this channel. Otherwise, I would have given up long, long ago. I'm happy to help people who want to be helped. I can't help you if you don't want to learn, you don't want to listen. And honestly, just go elsewhere. There are other YouTubers out there. You know, you're not going to agree with everybody. You'll have your own opinions. That's fine. Anyway, I apologize about the volume, but you're stuck with it because of this mic, and it's just too much trouble to boost it and all that stuff. So just increase the volume for a bit, guys. No big whoop. Anyways, so 26 minutes. That's pretty short for a tier list. I tried to rip right through it so you could just get on with your lives. I'll see you tomorrow. Snugs on Blitz, out.